This evening. My name is Mr. Cantor. I'd like to thank you for attending the second annual induction ceremony of the National English Honor Society, Bishop Lynch's newest honor society, dedicated to the promotion of reading, literacy, and fellowship. The NEHS is responsible for the online scholarly journal, BL Scholar, writing tutoring, which will start in about a week, hosting the Leiden Lecture Series. The first lecture will be November 20th. There's two more already scheduled for later in the year. Organizing a children's book drive. We've collected several hundred books that prior to Thanksgiving will go down to Children's Hospital. Working with the DPL and providing literary guidance to the freshmen. Without further ado, I want to turn this over for a little bit to our chapter president, Selena Ponyo.
As president of National English Honor Society and on behalf of Bishop Lynch High School, we dedicate the fellowship of the Ring Chapter to the goals of the society and our fidelity to the legacy left to us by our founders. To confer national distinction upon secondary school students for high achievement in English language and literature, to provide, through local chapters, cultural stimulation in secondary school environments, to encourage interest in the English language arts, to promote exemplary character and good fellowship, and to serve society by fostering literacy. We would now like to welcome our guest speaker, Professor Matt Bondurant of UTD.
Thanks. Thank you all for having me here for this induction ceremony. I've sat through many of these kinds of addresses and talks in my career as a student and as an academic, and for the most part, I found them internally boring and often esoteric, so I'm going to do my best here to talk about some real experiences about my experiences as a student, as an academic, and as a writer. I also have to begin with a disclaimer of sorts. I'm in the awkward position of addressing an organization that would not have me as a member. Well, they shouldn't have. I was vaguely aware of the English Honor Society in high school. And the one thing I was sure of, I was decidedly not qualified for it. The truth is, for most of my young life, I was a rather indifferent student. I had more important things to worry about, like the appropriate color Vans, hair gel, ways to look more like Kevin Bacon in the movie Footloose. This was the 80s. So we come from different situations, but all of us in this room tonight, we all share one thing, and that certainly is the love of books. I didn't know back then that I loved books per se. I just knew that I was reading them all the time, and that I felt most at home in my English classes talking and writing about books. In truth, I wasn't an attentive student, but there were exceptions. There were moments when the class experience spoke to me with great clarity, and it is these moments and the teachers and professors who facilitated them to which I owe much of the life that I have now. For example, in my sophomore year of college, I was taking a poetry survey course. And on this day, the teacher was reading us a poem from Sylvia Plath, and I don't even remember exactly which poem it was. But I do remember sitting there and watching her as she reached that sort of neat intersection of an emotive reading and full-out weeping, which when reading poetry can be really effective. And I had this sort of moment of clarity when I thought to myself, what is she seeing in that poem, or what is she reading in that poem that I'm not seeing? How is it that it affects her in this way emotionally? And then I thought, I want to know what that's like. Previously, academics and my teachers and professors, they kind of seem like these rare birds who are raised in darkened, silk-lined rooms or something. They're not really like real people. And of course, you come to find out later they are, or at least mostly. But I began to consider that perhaps I could somehow be like them or do what they do. And from that moment, literature ceased to be just about, good stories or pretty words. It was still those things, but things got much more serious. And this was a kind of an opening up, an introduction to the power of literature, the way it exposes to others and to share in their experience. This is no longer generally accepted wisdom, it's a scientific fact. I'm talking about empathy, the involuntary projection of ourselves into the thoughts and feelings and experiences of other people. We've all had these experiences, and literature allows us to have them often and at great depth. And to me, empathy is one of the more important capacities we can develop as human beings, the ability to understand others who are not like us. Imagine the world and how it would be different if we all had greater capacity to understand people not like us. There have been published studies, scientific studies, that establish a link between reading literature and the development of empathy. Note here, these studies specifically cite literary fiction as opposed to genre fiction. And here's a quote about genre of popular fiction from a recent study. Quote, although the settings and situations are grand, the characters are internally consistent and predictable, which tends to affirm the reader's expectations of others. It stands to reason that popular fiction does not expand the capacity to empathize, end quote. So I'm sorry, folks, but the Twilight series is not going to do it for you. It turns out that your Shakespeare teachers were right all along. They've always been right. So I'm here today giving this short talk, not really because I'm a scholar of any particular note, as my 14 years as a professor has produced little in terms of literary scholarship. Rather, I'm here because in that time I've managed to produce 3 novels, which some people at least felt were decent books, even literary. So it seems that I ought to be talking about the life of a writer, but I want to note here that I don't consider myself a writer, I consider myself a reader, first and foremost. Margaret Atwood's a writer, Thomas Pynchon, McCarthy, DeLillo, those are writers. I'm just a guy who wrote a couple things. I guess in undergraduate, right after I graduated high school, I began to consider the possibility of being a writer. Because in an undergraduate, I certainly thought I was a poet. And I mean a poet. I was the guy who was trying to lure the girls up to his room to read poems I had written. Morrissey wailing in the background, candles flickering. I would sleep in the woods at night clutching copies of Leaves of Grass. I memorized Byron, hoping for opportunities that never came. While working in a restaurant in Ocean City, Maryland one summer, I used to lug an old manual typewriter out into the beach at night, perch on the lifeguard stand, and hack away these terribly sincere odes to the moon, the ocean, and all the girls that I fell in love with but didn't know that I existed. The worst poetry is the most sincere. In those days, I was pinning my heart to the page with a knife. I watched firelight, sunrises, and small birds with a serious turn of mind. Of course, it was all horrible, and after messing around a few years after college, backpacking around the country and working at a ski resort in Colorado, I applied and was rejected by every MFA program I applied to. I began working at the Associated Press in DC, not a bad job, but I was desperate to get back into school, to read more books, take more classes, to be surrounded by people like you. I was spending my lunch hours in a bookstore at 19th and K Street, downtown DC, reading the collected works of Langston Hughes. I would dog-ear the pages so I could find my place the next day because I couldn't afford to buy the book. I found myself coming home from work so exhausted that all I wanted to do was eat dinner and do something mindless like watch TV, which is what nearly everybody in the world does, by the way. The world outside of academia can be a strange and cruel place for the English major in more ways than you think. So then I was determined to become a writer, or at least someone who writes. After my master's degree in literature, I spent about 5 years getting a PhD at Florida State, a school I selected because of several writers who taught there, and because of its proximity to several world-class beaches. I dedicated myself to the art of literary short story, and that's all we did. And I still believe the ability to craft and execute a quality short story can teach you just about everything there is to know about writing. After about 50 or 60 rejections, I started to have some success. I placed stories in various literary magazines and managed to get the attention of some agents. And of course, the agents, the first thing they want to know is if you have a novel. I didn't, but I said I did. By the way, if an agent ever asks you if you have a novel, the answer is always yes. In fact, the answer is always yes to whatever they ask you. My options were pretty wide open, so I did what most people do after graduation in this kind of situation. I followed a girl to Texas. This is how it happened, and this is a true story. So 2003, I find myself living in Austin, Texas, working at Dell Computers as a salesman. I was in a cubicle in a room of 500 cubicles, taking 40 calls a day minimum, trying to meet sales goals and sitting through soul-sucking meetings and training sessions. Our sales numbers were posted on massive chalkboards throughout the room, and the general atmosphere was like some kind of twisted production of Glengarry Glen Ross, but without any apparent irony at all. I had been haunting temp agencies' lobbies for weeks, and I was installing walk-in coolers part-time, which is very difficult on your hands if you have librarian hands like me. This is what a PhD without significant publications in your field will get you, which is the job, same job as everybody else without a PhD. I was an optimistic lad, despite having no prospects and no assets, save a 10-year-old Volkswagen with the front grille held on with garbage ties, all my worldly possessions in the back seat. I was saddled with debts of the usual variety, student loans, credit card, personal loan, debts of faith, but I was an earnest, budding literary novelist with an agent who had a full draft of a novel, and I thought if I ever did publish this novel, its arrival would make the sound of a feather hitting concrete, and it would be modestly respected among the usual esoteric academic circles. I merely hoped to eke out a living, hacking away my futile little lyrical fairy tales. I had all kinds of principles, aesthetic, artistic, ethical, many vows sworn in the hollowed air of graduate seminars, grand proclamations made during late-night sessions in drafty apartments and in the gritty hipster bars where people with advanced degrees played darts. I thought if I published even just one book, I would be forever changed. I would be different, more sophisticated, smarter, better looking, and more content with whatever life brought me after that point. So I then moved to the DC area because my girlfriend was starting graduate school at George Washington University, and my older sister was kind enough to allow us to crash in the guest room in her house in the suburbs. Again, I looked for jobs. My little niece and nephew would stand in the doorway to the guest room, their cute faces wrinkled as they puzzled over this rumpled, smelly uncle who slept till noon and had stacks of paper lined around the bed. I loaded the dishwasher and took them to the zoo in the mornings, where we ate nachos and watched the baboons howling at the coming day like broken-hearted winos. I was seriously considering lots of alternate professions, like the merchant marines. A few months later, I'm driving home in the Beltway in a downpour when an agent calls to tell me that a publisher, Hyperion, has made a preemptive offer on my book. I went directly to the coffee shop where my wife-to-be was dutifully studying American history in typical grad student fashion, and I actually made a scene, probably for the only time in my life. I busted in, practically hysterical, maybe even crying. This is actually happening. 3 years later, I published my second novel, What Is Counting the World, and 3 years after that, The Night Swimmer, and now I'm working on a fourth book, just trying to keep it going, just trying to hang on. Like a lot of writers, the success of the books in terms of sales only matters in that it might give me a chance to write another one. That's all we're hoping for, is the chance to do another book. The poet David Kirby once wrote that only shallow people and charlatans begin with perfect knowledge of what it is they mean to say. An honest writer begins in ignorance and writes his way to the truth. I would add to that, though, we write our way to the truth, we never quite reach it, and in the end we find ourselves again in ignorance. I believe as a writer you must come to realize that the writer really has no idea what they're doing. It is almost like the dirty little secret that writers don't want to admit, that we aren't in control of this thing, we aren't driving the ship. Yes, we craft and revise and tinker and ponder, but in the end, anything that is worth anything emerges from that other space, the one that is dark and filled with echoes of memory, with the channeled lightning of words, rhythm, and language. I do not wish to suggest that we are the instruments of some higher power, but I do believe the writer is merely paying attention. The writer allows the mystery to wash over them and to exist in the unknowing, and sometimes we're able to write some of this down. So to the would-be writers out there, and I know there are more than a few, I probably have very little to offer in terms of original advice or guidance, but this is what I've learned in 4 simple steps. At least 2 of them are simple. Number 1, read. Read more, read everything. When you are in college, do not take writing workshops. Yes, I know this is the advice that would actually take me out of a job that I have at UTD, but still. Take literature classes. About my first, I only had one undergraduate workshop, and I remember only one thing about it. I know, well, two things. I wrote a ridiculous story about this evil serial killer who actually never did anything but sit on a bench and just glower at people. And then secondly, the teacher in the class, this very quiet woman who used to wear blue jeans and would talk about strategies to help us to write. And I remember the one piece of advice she offered to us, and that was to drink a lot of coffee. And that's all that I took away from that class. You will have time for workshops later. Read. Every great writer is well read. Plenty of terrible writers are also well read. But there's no such thing as a great writer who has not read a lot more than you. Keep in mind that the most important books you will ever read, the ones that you will cherish until your final days, you are going to read in the next 10 years of your life. I'm speaking to the students here. Guaranteed. Your literary hearts are still soft and impressionable, and you will find a few books that make deep, lasting impressions that create the mold, and for the rest of your life, the other books you read will be compared to this mold. You will read better books later on, but none will mean as much to you, which is why it is so vital to read widely and read well. And most of what we do, teachers, professors of literature and English, is to provide guidance in this manner. I'm saying that we know what you should be reading. You should listen to Mr. Cantor, for example. He will tell you the right books to read. Number two, your parents probably don't want to hear this, but you need to go. You need to leave. You got to get out of here. If you want to write about Tibetan monks, move to frickin' Tibet. You are young, you're likely single, you don't need a lot of food or creature comforts. This will change as you get older. So no idea what you want to write about? Move to the place in the world you most want to live. Number three, develop an objective sense of self. Now this is much harder to explain. I remember the moment where I think it happened for me. It was in 1996. I was living in Paris for the summer. See step number 2, which consisted of me spending most of my time writing this lousy novella about a heartbroken college student in Paris with a series of pretentious black and white photos that I was taking of cemeteries, all of which contained a banana peel somewhere in the picture. There's no real good explanation for that. I was eating a lot of bananas. They're really cheap, and I was broke. So long story short, the American girl that I followed there, and yeah, I'm aware that there's a motif here in my young life. And let me just state this for the record, that moving across the country or the world and making drastic life changes or risking nearly everything you currently have in order to follow a dream of love or what you think is love, there is no more noble reason in the world to do such a thing. Is it a smart thing to do? No. People will try to stop you. Forget about them. So I was saying I followed this American girl to Paris, and it just so happened that she was dating an Armenian art dealer. Again, long story, but he paid me 500 francs to get out of town and to leave his girlfriend alone. So I went to Saint Raphael, which is on the coast of France, a really nice place, where Fitzgerald wrote much of Tender is the Night, which is one of my favorite novels. So I was laying on the beach reading Fitzgerald, and then in the evenings wandering the promenade, feeling very romantic and young, all at the same time. I don't think I spoke to anybody for 3 or 4 days. And sometime during those couple weeks, I began to see myself as a figure separate from myself, like a character in a book. I could clearly observe myself as one about my day, free of the blinding sense of importance and general narcissism. I began to see myself as a character in the world. Sure, I'm still just as narcissistic as the next guy, but I believe this kind of separation of self, even if momentary, is vital for a writer. Writing that is clouded by the storm of subjectivity is problematic. We must get a clear, objective look at ourselves before we can get a clear, objective look at the world. You must escape the prison of yourself. The important aspect here is the ability to question, to challenge not just others but yourself. Absolute certainty is a terrible mistake in all things. And the writer who accepts his own ignorance, who believes they are merely swinging in the dark, looking for light, riding toward the truth, is the one who is most likely to ultimately be successful. Of course, you realize you will never succeed if you are trying to create real art, because art is about perfection. It's about the truth. Which leads me to number 4, and the truth is that when I look in the mirror now, I'm still the same person I was before I published anything. I'm not better looking or smarter, or better at conjuring up witty small talk. I still walk around feeling like a charlatan, like a fake con man. and that at any moment this whole ruse is going to explode and everybody's going to realize it's great deceit. Contrary to my beliefs, everything was not solved. When I saw my book on the shelf of Barnes & Noble, I still felt unfulfilled, lost, unsure of myself as a writer, and deadly critical of my own work. My third novel, The Night Swimmer, came out last year. It had great reviews in the New York Times, but I'm still no more confident about my writing, and just as generally unsatisfied with anything I have done. Who cares about satisfaction anyway? Satisfaction is boring. It is complacency. It is death. Understand your ignorance. Read, then write toward the truth. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak with you today. Congratulations on this great achievement. And best of luck to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bondurant. The National English Honor Society was founded on March 25th, 2004 by Sigma Tau Delta, the International English Honor Society. NEHS was conceived as an outreach to high school students with the following primary goals: to recognize on the national level those who, on the basis of academic grades and performance, merit special note for past and current accomplishments; to nurture members to further develop their abilities in the various fields of English, and to encourage members to use their talents in the service of others. The Sigma Tau Delta Board of Directors believes that such goals are appropriate for students of English at all levels, and that with the development of the National English Honor Society, students of various backgrounds and grade levels can share with one another their mutual appreciation of literature, fine writing, language, and media studies. Now I'd like to introduce my co-board member, Sarah Belton.
The emblem of the society is a royal blue globe surrounded by a four-sided, curved corner gold figuration. The four sides of the shield symbolize the four major areas of the English language arts: literature, writing, language, and media studies. The sides do not meet sharply at right angles, but instead flow smoothly by means of the curved lines, one into another, suggesting a creative blending of multiple forms of literacy. Within the circle are an open book and a pen, traditional emblems for the language arts experience, and reminders of the potential power of words well expressed. The royal blue background represents creativity and inspiration, while the surrounding gold symbolizes both excellence and nobility of spirit. Overall, the four-sided figure, encased in a symbolic circle, is supported on the base of a torch, representing the light of truth as it shines through literature, language, writing, and media.
The NEHS motto, Yulas Shal Midara, is Old English for duty goes with honor. The motto affirms and celebrates an obligation to use one's gifts in service to others. Service to peers, school, and community are part of the parcel of the NEHS mission. And indeed, in the grammatical structure of the Old English phrase, duty actually precedes honor.
I now have the honor of bringing forth before you and this membership the candidates seeking membership into the Fellowship of the Ring chapter of the National English Honor Society.
When I call your name, please come forward to receive your pin and sign your name in the official membership book on the table. Due to scheduling conflicts, some inductees were not able to attend, so please be patient. Charlotte Larissa Bonaquisti. Aubrey Burton. Samantha Canavan. Katrin Corey. Allison Ganter. Taylor Garza. Anne Marie Geisler. Hamilton Holscher. Elise Horsack. Sam Joseph. Nicole Latoure. Mariah Lentz. Christine Marsan. Mackenzie Martin. Nicole Morris. Annette Wabike. Alejandro Ramirez. Ian Cifuentes. Peyton Smith. Piri Somiari. Corey Steele. Sophia Vieira. Matthew Villarreal. Mallory Wong. Alexandra Rose Amoyo. Meredith Archer. Alex Beagle. Angela Blake. Jonathan Camden. Luke Cannon. Amanda Clemens. Caitlin Kroll. Han Dow. Hannah Dutra. Amanda Ennis. Ali Ehrman. Grace Flanagan. Aubrey Addison Gilbert. Jonathan Gurma. Kendall Grazier. Omar Habib. Ashley Hanks. Amy Hess. Bridget Huford. Mackenzie Kimmons. Allison Knitch. Anna Rose McGoldrick. Courtney Newman. Jessica Wabike. Caitlin O'Connor. Krista Oshlin. Olive Pedraza. Caitlin Potter. Gabriela Rodriguez. Ariel Rodriguez. Emily Sabetti. Wendy Schneider. Andrea Sigsby. Katie Sutherland. Audrey Vilk. Benjamin Yoxall. Ashton Zipleto. Holland Bradley. Jordan Carl. Hannah Cheeser. Lauren Chester. Danielle Dufresne. Christine Ellinger. Megan Hertel. Libby Higgins. Sarah Grace Houston. Elena Kumasan. Kelly Cook. Adam Cronenberger. Sam Lynn. Elliot Maceda. Alexandra McMahon. Jennifer Morgan. Kenzie Morgan. Anna Maria Mosier. Tristan Nally. Lindsay Pinkard. Claire Suter. Madison Stevens. And Lauren Stewart.
Sorry, some people still need to sign the book. Thanks for being patient with us. We have like 85 new members and we started off with 13, so it's kind of trial and error. I now declare you to be members in full standing in the Fellowship of the Ring chapter of the National English Honor Society. We welcome you into the fellowship of this chapter and to the larger fellowship of members throughout the country. Will all members please stand and repeat after me? As a member of the National English Honor Society,
as a member of the National English Honor Society,
I shall endeavor to advance the study
I shall endeavor to advance the study
of all areas of English
of all areas of English
and to foster a spirit of fellowship
and to foster a spirit of fellowship
among students excelling
among students excelling
in all facets of the English language arts,
in all facets of the English language arts,
ever keeping in mind our national motto
keeping in mind our national motto
as our guiding principle,
as our guiding principle,
Gelast Seal Midar.
last seal with honor.
Duty goes with honor.
Duty goes with honor.
Congratulations. Please be seated.
All right, we're now ready to install our officers for the coming year. Each officer has important duties, and each is, in his or her own sphere, responsible for the chapter's success. Will the new officers please step forward? Those that are here this evening. We have as our president, Selena Ponyo. Historian, she's wandering around somewhere with a camera back there, Hana Kurihara. We have as our vice president, she is actually right now working with Blackfriars in the play, so she is not here this evening, although she is here on campus. That is Tori Holder. Secretary and our treasurer are also over here. We have Sarah Velton and Courtney Cook. You've been duly elected to your office in accordance with the uniform bylaws of the Fellowship of the Ring Chapter of the National English Honor Society. And I now have the honor to act as its representative and to induct you as executive committee members. Will you therefore repeat after me as you affirm the election of your office? And I can hear you way back there. I accept the office.
I accept the office
Oh, that's too cute. To which I have been elected
to which I have been elected
and promise to carry out my duties
and promise to carry out my duties
to the best of my ability
to the best of my abilities
and to abide by and support
and to abide and support
the bylaws of this chapter.
the bylaws of this chapter.
In the execution of my duties,
In the execution of my duties,
the guiding principle shall always be
the guiding principle shall always be
duty goes with honor.
duty goes with honor.
Congratulations. You are now officially inducted as President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, and Historian of the Fellowship of the Ring Chapter of the National English Honor Society. I just want to make a few comments here before we end the evening, and hopefully, unless some people have come by that we're not aware of, there's probably still some food and drink out there. You are able to mingle. But first off, I have several thank yous that I have to announce. First, for this evening, Mr. Matthew Bondurant, professor at UTD. We have a token of our appreciation for you. One of the books he mentioned that he penned was Wettest County in the World. Some of you probably know it by the movie named Lawless, starring Shia LaBeouf. Of which all the girls are, oh, Shia LaBeouf, yes, I know that. All right. A little over a year ago, NEHS began, and its first board, Lizette Hernandez, Chelsea Fira, and Becca Smith, created what would culminate in evenings like this tonight, a thriving membership of those who excel in literature and humanities. With now nearly 100 members, it's a testament to the hard work of those who have inherited their leadership. Jennifer Dorn, Tori Holder, Sarah Velton, Courtney Cook, Hannah, Curry Harris, Selena Ponyo, and others like Emily Isbell, Caroline George, Randy Peterman, Philip Dryden, etc., have been instrumental in their energy and their love for English to make this a success. Those of you I just mentioned and many others harbor not only a love for Bishop Lynch, but a love of literature and provide enough energy and organization to lead several honor societies. So I'm glad we have you to lead us. As Selena mentioned, we have inducted 85 plus new members. Let me explain, because it's quite impressive. Many times national honor societies from whatever discipline will simply post announcements through BL Live. You know, if you believe you qualify, come get an application. Well, we decided to do something a little bit differently and direct market. So I went to Mr. Steiner, who runs our databases here at Bishop Lynch, and asked him, can you query this? I want to know every sophomore through senior at our high school who has a cumulative GPA of 93% or better. He came back with over 160 names. And now I'm going to embarrass you. Because Selena decided in her infinite wisdom, and I don't know how she did this, that she would take all 163 letters in the envelopes, not only address them, but organize them in such a manner that as she walked down the halls when she was her office aide period, when she's walking down the halls, she would be able to simply hand them to the individual students by descending order of classroom in a particular hallway. This is why I like my job, because there are people that make this whole thing look really good, and y'all are amazing. So Selena, thank you very much for beyond organizational skills, energy. Jennifer Dorn and Hannah are pretty much in charge of BL Scholar. Hopefully you have seen that. Go to the web page and look at BL Scholar. I'll let everyone know when the next issue comes out. It is an online literary magazine of not only academic and creative works, but also artwork from the school. And those two are pretty much in charge of that. The book drive for benefiting Children's Hospital. Emily Isbell down here in the front and Caroline George, who cannot be here this evening, organized that for the entire month of October. We have several hundred books we'll be bringing down to Children's Hospital before Thanksgiving. Sarah Belton right here is our Leiden Lecture Series liaison. Last year we had one lecture with Dr. Rosen, a world-renowned Jewish scholar actually out of Jerusalem, and he spoke. This place holds 399 people. There were 450 in here. We have 3 scheduled this year, one being November 20th, an organization called LINK, Liberty in North Korea. We'll be here talking about human rights in North Korea. January 14th, 2 professors from University of Dallas will talk about Shakespeare. April 16th, a gentleman named Race, he is a Muslim gentleman, right after 9/11 was shot at close range in the face. After several surgeries, was able to find the gentleman who shot him and forgave him. Started a major nonprofit organization called World Without Hate. He will be here in April. And this young lady is meeting with me. She's meeting with Development Office, Mr. Leiden, to make sure all of this can happen. Courtney, right down here on the end, is working with all of our databases to make sure all the names get entered properly and all the lists are organized. It's a lot of work, and the energy that these ladies and young men are displaying is unbelievable. So current juniors and sophomores, when the spring comes and it is time to elect a new board, if you have half the energy that they do, we'll be in good hands. And I mean that sincerely. All right. As I mentioned, we're going to try and keep this short. I appreciate parents. You have to get my last thank yous. Students, I'll thank you every time. I'll see you in the hallways. I'll see you in the classroom. You're not important at this point anymore. Now it's for the parents. Because without the parents sending the students here and doing obviously an amazing job in the home, then we don't have the tremendous student body that we have here at Bishop Lynch with a reputation as fine as it is in the Dallas area. You make every teacher's job here, every staff member's job here, a very easy one. We actually have the ability, compared to my wife who teaches in the Garland Independent School District, we actually have the ability to teach, as opposed to just worrying about the STAR test or tax test or TEKS or whatever they call it these days. So I thank you, parents, for not only taking time out of your evenings to be here with your students, with your children, but also for the support that all of us certainly appreciate. On that note, I would like to say thank you once again for the evening. Whatever food and drink is left out there, please feel free to eat. Steal some, take some home. That's the less that we have to clean up. And I appreciate your time.